Everyone's familiar with Sega AM2, a division run by Yu Suzuki. Among their games in Sega's roster, Hang On, Outrun, Shenmue, Daytona USA, and the Virtua line of games, including the one-on-one fighting game sensation, Virtua Fighter. In fact, in the mid-90s, AM2 released quite a few big hits in the fighting genre to the arcades, and to the Sega Saturn. But there's one AM2 series in that genre that doesn't get so much attention as Virtua Fighter. It's Fighting Vipers, today on Gaming Delight.
Fighting Vipers.
Not much is known about this game's history, but what we do know is that Fighting Vipers was built on the same Model 2 engine used for Virtua Fighter 2, with a similar arcade board boasting faster processing. According to Next Generation magazine, when asked how it compares to Virtua Fighter 2, Yu Suzuki stated, "Fighting Vipers is characterized by a fighting style without ring-outs. We received comments about the ring-outs in Virtua Fighter indicating different changes, and so for Fighting Vipers, the fighting can continue mercilessly." Fighting Vipers was presented at the 1995 JAMA show, though the playable characters didn't have all their moves. The game was just 70% complete by that time. In November of 1995, Fighting Vipers was released to the arcades across the globe.
Fighting Vipers. Round 1. Let the action begin.
Unlike most fighting games at the time, this one uses an armor mechanic, in which the character's armor can be broken off by an opponent. Here are the 8 characters you choose from. First you have Bon, a 17-year-old high school student clad in a long coat and hat who has traveled overseas to find his wayward father. He nicknames himself Genghis Bon III. Bon almost reminds me of Daidoji from the Senran Kagura series. Raxel is a self-centered heavy metal band leader with armor that resembles that of Kiss. He's the son of a councilman of Armstone City. After a fight with his father, Raxel leaves home and enters the tournament for extra publicity. 19-year-old Grace is a fashion model born and bred in Armstone City. Her real dream, though, was to become a pro figure skater, but she was betrayed by her coach and lover. 16-year-old Tokyo is the ex-leader of the Black Thunder Street Gang who left after feeling he murdered another gang member. He's in the tournament simply for the thrill of it. Not much is known about Sanman, other than his obsession with the number 3 and that he drives a massive customized scooter. Honey, aka Candy, is a 16-year-old fashion student, clad in a plastic fairy suit she designed herself. Her goal in the tournament is to promote her fashion line. By far, she's the most popular character in the game. 18-year-old Jane is a construction worker who tried and failed to join the Navy, having injured numerous fellow seamen in training. She enters the tournament to demonstrate how tough she can be. And finally, 14-year-old Picky is a skateboarder. He wears armor similar to skateboard safety equipment, and he's capable of slapping his opponents with the skateboard he carries on his back. Again, as you fight an opponent, you can try to strip their armor. Aside from those new mechanics, it plays no differently than Virtua Fighter. Makes sense since Fighting Vipers was built on the Virtua Fighter 2 engine, but there's also caged arenas, something you don't often see in 3D fighting games. Plus, in a way, Fighting Vipers was the first of its kind to render 3D backgrounds. The final boss is BM, an odd name for a video game boss. He's the iron-fisted mayor of Armstone City, and he organized the tournament, which is also known as the Nutcracker. Once you beat him, game's over. Enough said. Upon release, Fighting Vipers was well received. It became one of the top 5 highest-grossing arcade PCBs in Japan at the time, according to Game Machine. Next Generation magazine gave it 3 out of 5 stars, calling it, quote, a beautiful, highly polished, polygon-rendered and texture-mapped game featuring brand new characters, unprecedented closed-in arenas for a 3D fighter, a slightly different set of fighting strategies using armor, and a more cinematic style of viewing. It wouldn't be long before Fighting Vipers saw a release on the Sega Saturn. Like the arcade original, not much has changed, appearance-wise, but this version has 3 unlockable characters. First you have Mahler, a 20-year-old mystery man with a grudge against BM. Second, there's Kuma-chan, seen in the background of Sanman's stage, unlocked by playing 50 games. The third unlockable character is only available in the Japanese version, which you're seeing right here. To unlock him, when you start arcade mode, you let your opponent fight you without fighting back. Before your health units reach 0, the game will issue a new challenger, who if you defeat, you unlock. That character is... Pepsi Man! Yes, Pepsi Man, the Japanese exclusive mascot for the popular brand of cola. And this was before he even got his own game on the PlayStation. You can also see Pepsi ads in the Japanese version of Fighting Vipers. Likely due to licensing issues, Pepsi Man and all Pepsi ads were removed from the Western releases. Fighting Vipers was released for the Sega Saturn on August 30th, 1996 in Japan, and October 29th, 1996 in North America. Europe also got a release that same year, but the exact date is unknown. Like its arcade counterpart, the Sega Saturn version also received praise. GamePro gave it an average score of 4.25 out of 5, with the fun factor note stating, aside from Virtua Fighter 2, this is probably one of the best fighters for the Saturn. It's not too deep, but it is fun. The magazine also stated, Fighting Vipers is one of our favorites because it's fast, sexy, and easy. Skilled veterans of Tekken 2 may want something with a little more depth, but this one is still worth a closer look. Fighting Vipers went on to become one of the hottest games in the Sega Saturn's holiday lineup that year in North America, but despite all the praise, it wasn't enough to bolster the Saturn's sales in the West in the long run. Sega's market share was already diminishing after the disastrous launch of the system in May of 1995, with only 6 games available during its 4-month head start over the Sony PlayStation, and the system itself initially selling for $400. Not only was the PlayStation eating up Sega's market share, but so was the recently launched Nintendo 64, which wound up selling over 1.5 million units in North America by the end of the year. The Saturn sales did skyrocket 5-fold by the 1996 holiday season, but not enough to overtake the competition and regain any market share it lost in the West. Plus, every console sold cost Sega serious money in hardware. Software sales didn't do any good. By 1997, the writing was on the wall. No matter what cool games came out for the Saturn, Nintendo and Sony always had a killer app making headlines to drive up sales of their consoles. The Saturn's surprise launch and its developer-unfriendly architecture had forced retailers and developers to shift much of their focus elsewhere. Plus, by the end of '96, Tom Kalinske had resigned from his position as head of Sega of America, seeing Sega of Japan's forcing the surprise launch as the final straw. There was nothing he could do to save the Saturn in the West anyway. There was nothing anyone could do. Now, those issues aside, Fighting Vipers is still a really well done game. Plus, it's a worthy fighting game for gamers to pick up and play. Fighting Vipers, to me, is one of the best games on the Saturn, and one of Sega's best 3D fighting games. And it's a shame that Sega hasn't revisited this game in a long time, but here's hoping we'll see it again, in some form or another. Personally, I consider Honey my favorite of all the characters in this game. She's got the best dresses, she's got the best armor, she's got the best style, and she's pretty much got the best special moves. But if I were to pick someone else, it would have to be Pepsi Man. It's too bad he never had a presence outside of Japan. Nor did his game. If you want to play it for yourself, the Sega Saturn version is inexpensive. To those with a PlayStation 2, Sega released Fighting Vipers as part of Volume 19 of the Sega Ages 2500 series of games, in Japan only. If you have a Japanese PS2, you're good to go. If not, there's multiple exploits to bypass region lock. The arcade version is also available on the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live in Japan as part of the Sega Model 2 collection, plus it has online play. If you have Judgment and Lost Judgment, Fighting Vipers is also available in those games as a playable arcade game. As for the future of Fighting Vipers, the main characters made their way onto Fighters Megamix, which I'll talk about in a later episode. The game also received a sequel for the arcades in 1998, and the Sega Dreamcast in 2001 for Japan and Europe. Honey is also said to be the inspiration for Honey the Cat, a character from the Sonic the Hedgehog series. And speaking of Sonic, a designer of Fighting Vipers actually incorporated Sonic and Tails into the game just for fun. But AM2 liked it so much, they made a full-fledged game out of it, Sonic the Fighters. But that too is a story for another time. Thanks again for watching Gaming Delight. Until next time, happy gaming!